it's those, sure, is it mindset, but it's also putting those standard operating procedures into play. I mean, I think the biggest fear of letting go of your baby, which when it's your business,
Hmm.
is that someone isn't going to care for it the way that you do. And they may not, because as the business owner, you have the greatest investment.
I can't believe it's been another 7 days, and we're back with another episode of A Titan's Tale. And today I have Carolyn Bennett-Sullivan with me today, and she's an author and a lot of other things. Actually, I was going to list everything, but there's too many things to let her do that. But I do want to mention one thing. She's an author of a book called Get the F Out. And I'm telling you, I I can't get that out of my head. I really enjoy it. But I'm guessing the F is not what I'm accustomed to, but we'll talk about that later. Hey, please welcome Carolyn. Carolyn, how are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. Thank you so much for having me, Chris.
Well, Carolyn, give us a brief summary of the life of Carolyn and how you became a business owner and so forth.
Okay, absolutely. So I basically grew up in Wilmington, Delaware, and have lived there most of my life. Now I live in North Carolina. And I always had what I would call an entrepreneurial spirit.
Hmm.
I did work in pharmaceuticals for close to 12 years and had other jobs, but there was always a part of me that liked the idea of doing my own thing. And how that actually happened was through a merger and acquisition. When we were being bought out by Pfizer, I decided not to stay in that industry. And so I got into direct sales, which I have to say I failed at miserably. And and that was a great learning experience of really what it takes to be a business owner. And through that, the challenges of that, I also got divorced. And that's what
Mm.
led me on my journey, really self-awareness of understanding how fear-based I had been most of my life and how I had allowed fear to hold me back and negative self-talk. And so from that, I got into coaching and then wrote my book. And then a few years later, I met my current partner and got involved with a golf game.
Oh,
So go figure, it's
well,
it's
golf's a lot of
it's
fun.
varied and it's and interesting and there's like never a dull moment.
Well, you kind of let the cat out of the bag is when you said fear. I assume that's what the F stands for in your book. Is that
Yes,
right?
yes, it does.
So, what's the book focus on? Obviously, fear, but mindset or, you know, overcoming those things, moving forward.
It is. It's really about identifying what causes fear. And so, like, chapter two is the seven faces of fear, which talks about different forms of fear, like anger is actually
Hmm.
a form of fear, you know. So it talks about that and really about coming into present moment awareness to actually listen to what I call your internal guidance system, your IGS, or some people might call that your intuition, your higher self, based on your beliefs. But for me, it's allowing yourself to quiet your mind enough to listen to what your own inner guidance is telling you, because fear is really driven by our egos and our egoic mind, I should say. And we're we're naturally designed, our brains are naturally designed to protect us, to put us in protection mode and to be in comfort mode,
Hmm.
as opposed to things that take us out of our comfort zone. And so the way that the brain works is that it will naturally try and pull us back into situations that are familiar when we're trying to make change. And so that is really what the book is about. I'm actually in the process of revising it to update it. I initially published it in 2015. So there are new information, and there's more science to back all of that I want to add to the book.
Is fear real? I mean, I know it's a real emotion. Are I don't know if you put a percentage on it, but how much is really something that we should fear, or is it just the overwhelmness of change that causes it, you think?
I, that is such a great question. I love that question, Chris. I think fear is what we determine it's going to be. So it can feel very real. There's a lot of acronyms for fear, like false evidence appearing real. I created my own acronym, feelings experienced as resistance.
Mm-hmm.
It can feel very real. So if you're in a situation, for example, let's say, for example, you can't pay your bills,
Mm-hmm.
that feels very real.
It is real.
You've
I mean,
got a pile of bills due, and you're like, how am I going to pay this? That feels very real. However, a lot of what appears to be real when it comes to fear is really past emotions coming up or projecting what might happen.
so while I'm not promoting people don't pay their bills,
Right.
it's not life or death though.
No, it's not life or death.
And
So,
so how do we overcome bills? Maybe a bad one, but I mean example, but it's still an example
right,
of something that's we feel anxiety about, but it's not really going to kill us. And we have to
exactly.
overcome those things to move forward. If we have to decide how we're going to pay our bills, so if today is not,
Right.
if it's not an easy way to write a check because you don't have the money, you have to calm yourself and think about, well, okay, I need to pay my bills. How am I going to make that happen? So you need to set that emotion aside, don't you? So how do you do that and collect yourself to focus on I guess, the anxiety at hand? What's causing your anxiety?
Right. So you need to learn how to quiet your mind. So in the book, I talk about our monkey chatter, which can be our inner critic, negative self-talk. You have to
Hmm.
learn how to quiet your mind and ask yourself, you know, is this really real? Like you said, is it life or death? Is this going to kill me? And if the answer is no, then you can quiet your mind and figure out a solution. I actually have a 7-step process that I created called Free Your Fear. And in that, it walks you through, really identifying those emotions that you're feeling, because emotions are real. We feel them. That's how we're designed as humans. But identifying them and then taking you through a process to come up with a solution for whatever that current circumstance or situation is. And so most of what we fear is not real, actually. And that is such a great question. Is
Yeah.
it going to kill me? Well, no, if it's not, then get quiet and listen to what are my options? What are the possibilities? And calm that monkey chatter so that you can actually tap into your own inner wisdom.
I don't know if you're a Christian or not, but there's a lot of things in the Bible about being quiet and just
Mm-hmm.
listening. And I wish I was a scholar. I could tell you the verses, but I can't. So anyway, so you and I talked earlier before we started recording about mindset. Is mindset a way to head off fear? Kind of get it before it happens type of thing?
I think so. I think you can get out ahead of it, by really, whoops, I just lost, just lost it. Oh, wow.
Oh,
Um,
well.
uh, I think you can really get out ahead of it by being very intentional on how you start your day.
Hmm.
You
Give me
know,
how do you start your day?
Um, typically before I get out of bed in the
Hmm.
morning, I think about things that I'm grateful for.
Hmm.
It may just be five things. It may be that I had a good night's sleep, you know, simple things. It might be the fact that I have a roof over my head. How many people don't have roofs over their head right now?
I
And,
mean, it
and
could.
people in this country with all the tornadoes that we've had and, really turbulent weather, you know, so it's starting the day with gratitude. I'd like to say that I meditate every day. However, I don't. But
It's
I
hard to do. It's a hard
it,
habit
it
to create.
it is, and for me, it's time. Getting up early enough to do it. But
Yeah.
that is a great practice. And even if I don't meditate, having that time of gratitude in the morning, even if it's just a few minutes, and centering myself and saying, what do I want today to look like? What's the energy that I want to have around today? And putting that out, kind of setting that intention and putting that out there as I'm looking for towards my day and the things I have to do, how would I like them to play out? And I'll give you an example.
Hmm.
This morning, I had to go to an office at DMV to get some paperwork
Yeah.
for the car to get it registration and inspected. And I set the intention, this is going to go smoothly. There's there's not going to be a lot of lines. I'm not going to have to wait, and I went on my way. And literally there were two other people in the office. Everyone was very friendly and kind. I was in and out of there with probably within a half an hour or less. And it worked out beautifully. And can I say, well, because I set that intention, that's exactly how it happened? Maybe not, yet I had a positive attitude going into it.
Hmm.
And I think that's the key. That's the best.
I'm trying to decide if it's going to relate to what you just said, but I'm going to say it anyway. So my my brother was having a birthday party for his kids at Pizza Hut, and sometimes Pizza Hut service, at least here locally, is not A1, but that's okay.
Hmm.
I like going there. I like the family visit, in the good room. And but I go with the expectation that I know what it can be, and if it's good, I'm just elated.
Hmm.
And so I showed up. My mom is really frustrated with some of the help. I said, "Mom, you knew when we scheduled this what it could have been like. So there's no reason to get upset because it's happening the way you thought it was going to happen. So there's no reason to get upset. You're exerting energy that's not necessary. It's it's the way
Exactly.
we expected it, and then but we've been back and I have the same attitude, and it's been excellent service. And it's just a expectation, an understanding of what you're going to get yourself into. The DMV is a perfect example. What you're bringing up is
Hmm.
that they're always busy, and they've got rules they got to follow that they didn't even make.
Right.
And um, the book, oh, Winning Friends and Influence People,
Hmm.
and he talks about just smiling. If you smile, you can influence a lot of things, yourself and others. And it's very powerful, like you're talking about. And that's a mindset thing, I would think. Wouldn't it be prepared to smile?
Oh, absolutely. Eh, You know, when you s- when you s- you can do an experiment. So I do this sometimes when I go walk. I like to walk in a nearby park.
Hmm.
And it's interesting when I smile at people, how many people smile back.
Yeah.
And it's just that, or they'll say hello. It's now granted, I live in North Carolina and people tend to be very friendly here. So
Hmm.
you know, however, it can brighten somebody's day, just to smile.
Yeah.
And it makes you feel better too.
From a business owner standpoint, going through, we used to call it management by walking around. And you walk around, say good morning, everybody. I thought that was important. We go say hello, you acknowledge them. Um, Try to get to a point where you call everybody by name, but it's just the mindset, and people see you, and it makes you feel good, makes them feel good, and it helps the attitude of your company. And they have fears too. Your team does, whether it's a big company,
Exactly.
little company, and that is contagious, I guess, in a way. Especially if they see it's
It,
okay.
yeah, exactly. And you set up, even if you never talk to that person, it's like extending a happy greeting to them,
Yeah.
just by smiling. Doesn't cost you anything.
Mm-mm. Nope. So, you help business owners and others overcome their fear through coaching. Can you tell me a story that, obviously not without using any names, that you've went in and helped them overcome some fear of some sort that they
Mhm.
maybe didn't realize, or they did and they just didn't know how to overcome it?
Absolutely. I can think of somebody I coached who really wanted to start her own business,
Hmm.
and she was working somewhere else where she wasn't uh, necessarily appreciated,
Sure.
for her skills and talents, and just didn't have uh, a whole lot of self-confidence to put herself out there. And so we worked together. I have a coaching program, and I
Hmm.
took her through the coaching program, and we worked together. And during that time, she was really able to uncover a lot of the limiting beliefs she had had about herself. I really like to take a deep dive with clients about where did the limiting beliefs, where did they originate from? Because most of our, limiting beliefs and beliefs that we have about ourselves happen from prior to age 7.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we may obviously, as we develop and age, we have lots of experiences that may cause other beliefs, to be
Right.
created. But a lot of our strong internal beliefs happen in early childhood. So I like to take a deep dive with clients and really go back and understand, how did this belief get started, if they can consciously remember it, right?
Hmm.
And look at them to see, well, is this helping me? Is it hurting me? Is it true? Because there's so many beliefs that we have about ourselves that aren't even true.
Right.
And until they're identified, you can't change them, right? So we worked together on that, and really uncovered some beliefs that she had that she'd been carrying around for decades, that we were able to dismantle and change. And then I helped her work on a roadmap
Hmm.
towards her next steps. So this has been a few years now, and she started her business. So she actually is ordained to do wedding ceremonies and baptisms and funerals. And she is so happy, and she's successful, and she's loving the work she does. And it's just a happy ending, because she really was able to step into doing what she wanted to do, and has been very, very successful at it. And so you love to see that. I love seeing the transformation that occurred within her. I mean, she had to do the work,
Hmm.
I just consider myself basically the messenger or the guide because if you want transformation, you have to be willing to do the work
Sure.
for that to occur. So,
The word fear in some places, it's a pretty strong word, and fear can mean a lot of things. And this is probably, and it all boils down to fear. But when you're coming on something new and you've never done it before, and sometimes you don't even have the help. We have a lot of information available today that we didn't have. Well, we had accessibility to it, but it wasn't easy to find, like in libraries.
mhm,
But so when somebody moves forward, takes the leap of faith, does their thing, and finally it becomes a habit, and it's like, oh well, I don't know what I was even worried about. This is so simple, and I'm doing it all the time. How do you suggest somebody take that leap of faith? What could they do to? I know we talk about being quiet, but it's not really a fear. It's more of a, I guess, resistance. I mean, fear to me is like downright scared, and this is, I guess, you're still scared, but you're actually, you got to do it to get there, and you just wish you had somebody to hold your hand or you had a little more information. But sometimes you can get to the what they call it, analysis paralysis.
right.
How do you get somebody to just move forward and make it happen?
Uh, Take baby steps.
Yeah, break it down
You
into
know,
little goals,
break it
or
down into chunks so it doesn't feel so overwhelming. And Chris, for entrepreneurs in particular, small business owners and entrepreneurs, you often wear so many hats, at
hmm,
least initially, until you can build a team,
yep,
right? And so it's very easy to get overwhelmed and then you get stuck not doing the things that you don't want to do that you know are necessary, right?
right,
Guilty. And so it's chunking it down into baby steps and saying, okay, what if I just do this today?
yep,
What if I just do this one thing that's going to move me closer to this out that I desire? This one thing. And then I'm going to do this next step. And then I'm going to do the next step. And you can build it that way because the analysis paralysis, you talk about people, who are perfectionists
hmm,
that, they won't launch anything. They won't do, it's got to be perfectly exactly right. No, it doesn't. You want to give your best, but it doesn't have to be perfect. Sometimes you just have to get out there and do it.
I was guilty of that a long, long time ago. I was a perfectionist, and but I had a different role, I guess. And then I was gonna, my question, team, okay, because you said team, that's what made me. And this might be the same answer you just gave me. But all right, so let's say I'm a solopreneur right now, and I'm moving on. This is my baby. This is my business, and I'm seeing traction and so forth. If somebody like me or you come along and say, "Hey, you need to hire a team," that way you're working on your business instead of in your business type thing.
Mhm.
The E Myth, if anybody read that book, and that's scary in itself. You're turning something over to somebody. It's kind of like a mother, I guess. I have two daughters, and even my wife, taking your baby to the babysitter for the first day, and there, well, there has been tears. I took my children to the babysitter instead of my wife sometimes, and I didn't have any tears, but I'm a man, so it might be a little different. But for me, but the point being is that you are turning something that you're responsible for over to somebody else, and that's hard to do. And for a babysitter, it's almost like there is no baby step to see if you took him or you not didn't.
Right.
Did you drop the child off today? Yes or no? So some of those things you have to make decisions on, and they're
Mhm.
tough. Is it mindset, or how do you overcome those things, or how do you suggest others come overcome those things?
I think one of the ways that you can reduce the fear of that,
Hmm.
it is mindset. It's also preparation.
Yeah.
in terms of being really clear about the role that person is going to fill, what their
So
responsibilities are, communicating that,
communication, yeah,
training,
SOPs. Help me out. What's
standard
SOP?
operating
Thank
procedures.
you. Standard
Yeah,
operating procedure. I remember an assistant came to me one day. This was years ago. She goes, "Let's do some SOPs." And it's like, I don't know what you're talking about, but like, oh, you standard procedures. I got you.
right.
So,
So, it's those, sure, is it mindset, but it's also putting those standard operating procedures into play. I mean, I think the biggest fear of letting go of your baby, which when it's your business,
hmm,
is that someone isn't going to care for it the way that you do. And they may not, because as the business owner, you have the greatest investment.
yeah, they won't care for
And-
it. You gotta get the right person, but they won't care for it the way you care for it.
right,
That's a given, no matter what, because it's a
right,
different perspective.
exactly. However, by being prepared, by communicating, by having those processes and procedures in place and training them, you can have people that fill those roles really well, maybe even better than you because they have the right skill sets. And that's the
Hmm.
other thing that you have to look for. What are the skill sets of those people that are going to complement or even improve what your skill sets are? So
So in
I
hiring,
know, for
go ahead.
example,
Hmm.
social media marketing. We all have to do social media marketing. And I am really good at strategy. I'm not so great at implementation.
Sure. Well, I'm there. I'm on social media, but I like the fact that my virtual assistants take care of that for me, and they do it much better than I do. There's no doubt.
Exactly.
But
So it's knowing your strengths and knowing who
your
you need
weaknesses
to
too.
bring on, and your
Yeah,
weaknesses, and knowing who you need to bring on to the team that can make the overall business stronger. So
I talk about sometimes you gotta have faith at some point. Just a leap of faith, whether
absolutely.
and you like to think and you do everything you can to make sure that that leap of faith is not just a jump in a deep lake that has no bottom, but you
Right.
know that you're at least I've done everything I can to make sure this decision I made, this action I'm going to take, is the best thing for me or my business
Hmm.
or my clients, whatever it is, my family. And but sometimes you just got to set a date and make it happen.
Exactly. And I'm going to add this: not being afraid to fail,
Mm, yeah, that's a good one.
because and you know this, Chris, business owner, you've had failures. That's how you learn. That's you
Hmm.
know, there's no, I don't think there's a single successful business owner out there that hasn't had failure and had to overcome those failures, pivot, and you learn from that. So maybe your first hire isn't a great choice. You find out, you know,
Yeah.
so then you say, well, what did I learn from this? What do I need to do better next time? But I think that in our society, at least in corporate, failure is looked upon really negatively. And I think that's a shift that would benefit our society if we started looking at failure more as experience and an opportunity for innovation.
So I
I
read a
think.
lot of books, and I can't remember exactly where this come from, but it's based on educational cost. We pay for education, and you got to look at it that way, like an investment. And I have hired wrong people. I have made the wrong decisions on lots of things, but you look at it as like, okay, now I know what not to do next time. And I'm going to chalk that up to education. And sometimes education is pretty expensive, but doing it twice is more expensive than just learning from the first time. So
Exactly.
now you, I believe, are also kind of involved with the Small Business Association. Is that right?
That's correct. Well, the Small Business Center at
Oh,
Forsyth
sister,
Tech.
I got
Yeah,
you.
at a local community college. Yeah. So not
Okay.
the SBA. No.
Okay. Carolyn, I know that you're part of the Small Business Center and you help others start their businesses and so forth. And you obviously, before you recommend them for the center, you have to do interviews, I guess. And not everybody's, well, I used to think that everybody could be, but not everybody needs to be an entrepreneur or a business owner.
That's
What's the
true.
what's the characteristics of, I guess, somebody who you think can? Y'all get into the like personality, you know how people get broken down to personalities. Y'all get that deep into it, or you can just
No,
tell?
not typically. I think some of the key characteristics that I've observed over the last year and a half since I've been in that role are people who take action on
Hmm.
recommendations. So I will counsel, mentor, coach them. We also have mentors who are experts in different fields that they can meet with. Um, and so if certain recommendations are given to them and they take action and then they follow up, they're serious. You know, sometimes we get people who uh, will register with us, so they can just register as a small,
Hmm.
and or maybe they're thinking of starting a business and then they never follow through. You give them
Right.
suggestions, or they continually come back and say, well, can you do this for me? Can you do that for me? Can you do this for me? And they have to have an understanding. Listen, if you're going to own a business, you need to take this action. That's not
Yes.
my role. My role is not to write a grant application for you. My role is to point you in the direction where you can learn about grants and grant
Hmm.
opportunities and how to complete a grant application. It is not my role to do that for you. It's not my role to write your business plan.
Yep.
So it's really, for me, the characteristics are people who follow through, who take action, who do the next step, um, and who have the resilience and understanding that owning a business, whether you're a solopreneur or you plan to build, a huge business, that it's a process and it's
True.
going to be one step at a time. And despite what you might see on YouTube, you're probably not going to make $1 million in the next 90 days
No.
or year.
And maybe the next 12 months. Yeah, I was going to say next 12 months. It's not that it's impossible, just
No,
not as likely as it might sound like that.
right.
So, in your next version of Get the F Out, what have you learned over the last 9 years that you're going to update? Have you learned
I
anything
have,
new that you think is
oh
important?
my gosh, I have learned so much. Well, one of the ironies of writing that book and publishing it was it was like after I put it out on the marketplace, the universe came back to me and said, okay, girlfriend, you can talk the talk, but can you walk it? And the
Mm,
answer was no, I couldn't. I could talk the talk. I knew what I was writing about when I wrote the book, but had I actually really let go of some of my own fear? And the answer was no. So I actually went through a period not long after I published the book that was really like a dark night of the soul
Mm-hmm.
period. And the beauty of that was that it really helped me come to terms with some of uh, the limiting beliefs and false beliefs that I had about myself that I really hadn't worked through when I wrote the book. So that was quite the process, going through that. In addition, I've moved uh, from Delaware to North Carolina now, and
Mm-hmm.
have started operating a business with my life partner, a golf game. So that has
Mm-hmm.
been a huge learning experience in and of itself. Not only,
Sure.
operating a seasonal business, but working with my partner, talk about getting
Yeah.
the F out.
My
And
wife doesn't want to work with me.
that word may not always be fair.
That's one thing that she and I both agree on 100%. So,
So, there's been a lot of learning about how to manage those fear-based emotions and thinking and mindset, too,
hmm,
with operating a small business like that.
sure.
So it's been quite the
Before we
journey.
go, I want to, I bet it has. Before we go, I didn't mention you had your own TED Talk, right?
Mhm.
How
TEDx.
how
Yeah, I
did
did a
that? I
TEDx.
mean, TEDx. I'm sorry. Well, it used to be called TED Talk, didn't it? Back in the day. I don't know. I'm a little slow.
Well, TED Talk is the national stage, and then TEDx are
Yeah.
the local
Oh,
talks. Yeah,
so was that in Delaware or North Carolina?
it was in Delaware.
Okay. And did you
Yeah,
speak about your book?
actually, no, I didn't. So the theme of that uh, TEDx talk was about um, building community through innovation.
Mm-hmm.
So my talk was related to the book in, how to overcome fear and how to not be afraid of failure, in terms of connecting communities and being innovative, allowing people to fail so that innovation is encouraged, in a community,
Sure.
in an organization. So that's what the talk was about. Yeah, it was a
Well, I don't care
great experience.
any public speaking for some is getting the fear out because
Right.
some people just can't do it and terrifies them. So, well, Carolyn, if I wanted to reach out and get with you for either coaching or your book or anything like that, how would I get hold of you? Or how would our guest get hold of you?
Okay, so the best way to get hold of me is through email, and they can email me at carolynbsullivan.com.
Mm-hmm.
You can
And
also find me on, I'm on Facebook and
mm-hmm.
LinkedIn.
Yep. Awesome. And you can also go to a Titan's Tale and do the podcast. We have a guest podcast sheet and profile, and you can learn more about Carolyn and all the other great guests we have. Carolyn, thank you for your day and your time.
Thank you so much, Chris. I have
All right.
enjoyed this immensely.
Perfect. All right, guys. We'll see you next week on another episode of A Titan's Tale.